Dear ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to welcome you to the second international conference dedicated to the Pan-European Personal Pension Project. It is my honor to welcome Professor VUZF for an introductory speech, Director of VUZF University.
Здравейте, уважаеми колеги!
Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues,
необичайна е средата, в която провеждаме тази конференция.
The situation in which we have the conference now is unusual.
Но това още един път показва високия капацитет на висшето училище по застраховане и финанси.
But this once again shows the high capacity that VUZF University has.
В условията на пандемична ситуация,
In a situation of pandemic,
а да направим такава голяма международна конференция с такова голямо значение не само за България, за финансовите пазари, финансовата мисъл на България, но и за цяла Европа.
also such a huge conference, international scientific conference dedicated on various aspects of investment activities, not only in Bulgaria, but also worldwide.
Специално искам да благодаря на господин Бойко Атанасов, председател на Комисията по финансов надзор.
I would like to especially thank Mr. Boyko Atanasov, who is the chairperson of the Financial Supervision Commission of Bulgaria,
който прие от сърце и стана патрон на тази конференция.
who cordially agreed to be the patron of this conference.
Искам да благодаря и на екипа на господин Бойко Атанасов,
I would also like to thank the team of Mr. Boyko Atanasov,
който в процеса на изграждането на тази конференция получихме много сериозна подкрепа.
who supported this conference.
Искам да благодаря на Министерството на финансите,
I would also like to thank the Ministry of Finance of the Republic of Bulgaria,
на министри и вице-премиерката Мариана Николова, която подкрепи сериозно нашата конференция.
to Vice Prime Minister Mrs. Mariana Nikolova, as well as other ministers who supported the conference,
И на председателя на икономическата комисия към парламента, на господин Петър Кънев,
as well as to the chairperson of the Parliamentary Committee on Economic Development and Tourism, Mr. Petr Kanev,
от които получихме и много красиви и много така важни за нас поздравителни адреси.
who also sent us very kind addresses conference.
Тук използвам и така възможността да благодаря на екипа на ВУЗФ,
I would also take the opportunity to express my gratitude to the team of VUZF University,
който положи неимоверни усилия
who did a great job.
тази конференция да стане факт.
This conference takes place.
Сега, преди да дам думата на господин Бойко Атанасов
Before
за
I give
неговото
the floor
приветствено слово,
to Mr. Boyko Atanasov for his speech,
искам да ви представя професор Желязкова, която е заместник ректор на висшето училище.
I would like to present you Professor Zhelyaskova, who is Vice Rector of the University,
която ще бъде модератор на първият панел.
who is going to moderate the first panel.
И след официалната част ще направи допълнителни разяснения за организацията на тази конференция във времето.
Will go and is going to provide some specific instructions on how the conference is going to take place after the official part.
Така, господин Бойко Атанасов, заповядайте.
Mr. Boyko Atanasov, please take the floor.
Уважаеми доцент доктор Вазов,
Dear Professor VUZF,
уважаеми дами и господа,
dear ladies and gentlemen,
представители на европейски и национални органи и институции,
representatives of European and national organs and institutions,
на български и чуждестранни академични и научно-изследователски общности.
of Bulgarian and international academic institutions,
Уважаеми гости,
dear guests,
благодаря за любезната покана на организаторите
I'd like to thank the organizers for the kind invitation.
Висшето училище по застраховане и финанси
VUZF University.
и удоволствието да открия този форум с участието на представители на академичната общност.
And the pleasure to open this forum with the participation of representatives of the academic community,
национални и европейски органи,
national and European institutions,
публични институции,
public institutions,
потребители и бизнес,
consumers, business,
на който да се споделят идеи,
where we can share ideas,
креативност, проактивни подходи и добри практики.
proactive approaches and practices.
Въвеждането на унифициран продукт за лично капиталово пенсионно осигуряване
The introduction of the pan-European personal pension product
една от най-сериозните инициативи в областта на капиталовото пенсионно осигуряване на европейско ниво.
One of the most important initiatives in the area of capital pension insurance.
Спокойно мога да кажа, че паневропейският пенсионен продукт може да бъде определен като уникален продукт.
I can say that this product can be identified as a very serious one.
Няколко негови характеристики дават основание за подобна оценка и признание.
Some of its characteristics provide us with the grounds to express this opinion.
На първо място, това е широкият кръг доставчици, които могат да предлагат ПЕП.
This is the wide spectrum of providers who can provide this product.
Институциите за професионално пенсионно осигуряване, животозастрахователите, инвестиционните посредници, лицата, управляващи предприятия за колективно инвестиране и кредитните институции.
Various pension providers, investment companies, as well as other actors and stakeholders on the market who will be enabled to provide this product.
На второ място, това са
place,
пряко приложимите единни изисквания в законодателството на Европейския съюз, обединяващи под един етикет разнообразни продукти.
At the same time, this product offers unified characteristics for the whole European area,
които същевременно трябва да позволяват и достатъчно гъвкавост при разработването на продуктите.
Which characteristics at the same time should allow flexibility for local specificities.
В допълнение следва и предлагането на продуктите в целия Европейски съюз.
In addition, ensues providing these products across the whole European area.
При това, паралелно с вече утвърдените форми за спестяване за старини.
Enhancing the specificities and the characteristics of various savings accounts and savings forms.
На последно, но не по важност място и безпрецедентното високо ниво на конкуренция вследствие на предходните особености на ПЕП.
Last but not least is the unprecedented level of competition on the market that will ensue from all these characteristics of PEP.
Като причинно-следствена връзка може да повдигнем въпроса какви ще бъдат резултатите от ПЕП за заинтересованите лица.
It is very important to ask the question what will be the outcome of PEP for all the insured persons.
Имам предвид за потребителите, за бизнеса, за националните европейски институции и икономиката като цяло.
For the national and international companies that are on the market.
Регламент 2019-1238 ясно очертава целите си както по отношение на осигуряване на адекватен пенсионен подход.
The reglement of the European Committee ensures a unified approach.
Така и за развитието на капиталовите пазари и на икономиката в цялост.
As well as ensures new products for the national and international providers.
От ключово значение за осигурените лица ще бъде доколко разбираем и достъпен е ПЕП като продукт.
It will be very important for all the interested parties to what extent PEP will be understandable and easy to manage.
До каква степен отговаря на потребностите на потребителите и как конкретно е по-изгоден за тях?
To what extent it matches with the necessities of all the insured persons and in what way it is more adequate for their needs.
Пред доставчиците на ПЕП стоят предизвикателни въпроси.
There are a lot of questions that stand in front of PEP implementation.
Като посоката на разработване на продуктите и тяхното предлагане в съответствие с нуждите на потребителите.
Such as the direction of the creation of the various PEP products and the way they will be offered on the market.
Развитие на условията на пазара за разпространение на продукта.
The development of the market of the product.
Нормативните изисквания и очакваните приходи и разходи от него.
The legislative requirements as well as the various P&L aspects.
В този ред на мисли и какви са последиците на съществуващите вече продукти.
It will be very important what will be the consequences on the existing products on the market from the introduction of PEP.
Които по дефиниция и на практика обслужват спестяванията за старини.
By definition, we are currently using a number of other products for saving purpose.
Резултатите от съвпадението на търсенето и предлагането между двете групи заинтересовани лица.
The results of the matching of demand and supply for the two type of market participants, providers and consumers.
Имам предвид доставчици и потребители.
Providers and consumers.
Ще обуславят обема средства, които ще акумулира паневропейския продукт и ефекта от него.
Will justify the amount of the funds that will be on this market.
И как това ще повлияе на капиталовия пазар и икономиката като цяло.
And how will this impact capital markets and the economy as a whole?
Тук е място да допълни, че ролята на европейските националните институции, натоварени с регулирането и текущия надзор във връзка с ПЕП.
Here is the point to stress on the importance of the role of European and national authorities that are involved in the implementation of PEP.
Е от изключително важно значение.
Very, very important.
Осигуряването на равностойни условия за конкуренция и управление на ефективния надзор.
Ensuring the environment for regulation and for supervision.
Са въпроси от ключово значение за защита на интересите на потребителите и за стабилността на пазара.
Very important for the security of both the market and the consumers.
Но,
however, there is a big but, and we will see what it is.
Че в процеса на постигане на целите от изключително значение са детайлите.
That in this process details take and play an important role.
Регламент 2019-1238 очертава базисните правила за паневропейските пенсионни продукти.
The reglement of the European Committee drafts all the technical specificities and requirements related to PEP.
Като комбинира използването на конкретни изисквания с критерии.
And it combines the combination of specific criteria and more general criteria.
Предполагащи преценка при прилагането им и делегира уреждането на редица въпроси в техническите стандарти.
And all these details are regulated within the technical standards of PEP.
Предложенията и становището на ЕОПА в тази насока вече е факт.
EIOPA statements in that direction is already a fact.
Като предстои произнасянето на Европейската комисия.
And we're awaiting the opinion of the European Commission on that.
Характерът на регулираните въпроси.
The character of the regulated matters.
Разнообразието от продукти и широкия кръг заинтересовани лица.
The variety of products and the wide range of interested persons.
националните специфики в контекста на общите изисквания в законодателството на Европейския съюз,
national specificities within the more general European framework,
неминуемо предполагат множество въпроси и палитра от визии и позиции по тях.
indispensably lead to a number of questions, visions, and opinions on them.
Отговори на тези въпроси ще бъдат дадени не само от закона,
Answers to some of those questions we will find not only within the legislation,
а де-факто и от действията на всички участници в разработването, дистрибуцията и надзора върху ПЕП.
but also by all the stakeholders involved in the interpretation, distribution, and supervision of PEP.
И ще определят доколко успешен ще бъде наистина този паневропейски продукт през период.
And will define to what extent it will be successful.
През период, в който е ключов в развитието на финансовия сектор на Европейския съюз и на икономиката като цяло.
In a period which is key for not only the development of the project, but also of the European Union as a whole.
Днешният форум дава възможност именно в сферата на дискусия и комуникация
Today's event will provide opportunities exactly within the area of discussion and expression of opinions.
На гледни точки по отношение на самите детайли.
With regards to the specific details,
днес ние ще започнем среща между представителите на науката, потребителите, бизнеса и публичните институции.
Today we will start a discussion among the participants from the academic community, business, and national authorities.
Обменът на опит, знания и мнения
Exchange of experience, knowledge, and ideas
ще обогати всички участници.
Will enrich all the participants.
Ще даде отговор на редица въпроси и ще постави нови, разбира се.
Will lead to answers of a number of questions and will pose new questions.
Защото развитието на ПЕП предстои и именно ние носим отговорността за него.
Because the development of the Pan-European Personal Pension Project is upcoming and it is our responsibility how it will be developed.
Пожелавам на всички вас ползотворни дискусии и приятни.
I wish to all the participants fruitful discussion. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Atanasov. Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear participants, I would like to inform you that this conference is a continuation of the initiative of VUZF University, which started back in 2018. And in this conference, there will be more than 60 participants from various institutions, public institutions, universities, business representatives, etc. Not only from our country, Bulgaria, but also from the European Union. We would like to extend our special gratitudes to the chairperson of EIOPA, Mr. Gabriel Bernardino, who supported this forum, as well as all the people who are who supported this forum from Pension Europe, from IPAMA, and from other institutions across the European Union. Now it is my honor to give the floor to Mrs. Sandra Hack for presenting her report to this conference. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. This is Sandra Hack from EIOPA. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes, it's okay.
Excellent. I will share a presentation for you that I prepared, because I have to apologize that my camera is not working. So first of all, dobro utro and good morning to everyone. Again, thank you very much for the kind invitation to speak at this very important event, this conference, on a very important topic where EIOPA has been working for a number of years. And I'm very happy to give you a quick overview of where we stand in the development of a pan-European personal pension product and EIOPA's role in this. So first of all, where we started from is the challenge, and that is something that we have been, of course, monitoring for a couple of years, where we see that pension savings in Europe are under pressure, and that has to do with the different challenges that come together when it comes to pension savings. So social security systems are under pressure, occupational pensions are often unavailable. And of course, we see more and more the role of new forms of labor that has to do, of course, also with the vision of the European Union, having mobile workers, but also the new ideas of, let's say, part-time and self-employed workers. And in addition, we have the challenge of very limited savings potential in a number of member states. So there is the risk that there is a potentially widening pensions gap, in particular for vulnerable groups, but also, of course, for the modern European citizen. So we wanted to address this challenge by also designing, let's say, a product. So the vision was really that we wanted to provide a powerful tool, a valuable tool for the European citizen that can complement the first and second pillar pensions, so the state and the occupational pension sector. It should be a valuable, let's say, proposition for the citizen, because here, of course, it is expected to be voluntary, so this is not a mandatory scheme. And it should be flexible enough to maintain this PEP throughout the working life. So in particular, when we look into the new forms of labor, where there's maybe part-time work, maybe partly self-employed, that this is a product that you can take throughout your life, and you're not bounded by or limited by any decisions that is sometimes often in the occupational pension sector. So this is an opportunity. In addition to that, and this is also to do that we wanted to address the pension savings gap for the majority of the citizen, this needs to be a cost-efficient product, so that it is really worthwhile to save into that product, even with a lower income. And surely this product should be tailored to the pension objective, which is, of course, a long-term perspective. But the end goal is not, let's say, maximizing, let's say, in a particular year, the investment returns. It is really to enforce and to enable reliable, stable, and appropriate retirement income. For that, we also believe that it is important to give access to the consumers, a safe access to capital markets in the European Union. And here, of course, to also have a viable business proposition for the provider of the PEP. So the key building blocks, and this is a concept, of course, that you can take for other occupation pension schemes, for example, or also for other products. We looked into behavioral economics. We looked into what is, let's say, a good design for products that, first of all, of course, engage and that also address the consumer's demands and needs. And I already discussed that we, of course, need to assess the challenges that we face. But we also, of course, know that every life is different and the circumstances are different. So we want to look into a good balance between standardization. This is to reap cost efficiencies in particular, to reach scale. Also, of course, to build investment portfolios that can make sense, that have a strategic investment allocation. But also standardization, of course, helps to in the communication with the consumer, because here we have the opportunity to build a quality label PEP. However, as circumstances, as individual lives are different, and also every individual is different, and we wanted to design a product that helps, of course, the majority of the people. We wanted to also to allow for flexibility, and here, of course, to adapt the PEP to the individual needs. This has to do with risk appetite, but this also has to do, for example, with the decumulation of the PEP. So what are the options, the payout options in the retirement phase of the PEP? And here, I think there is still, of course, still a lot to do. On the other hand, we wanted to allow for flexibility to really also incentivize innovation, where you can see that in the regulation that we have been proposing to the European Union to really fix a strong ambition, a strong objective in a principle-based way, and that can be then enforced with strong and also, let's say, reliable limits and thresholds. And in particular, it allows different approaches. And if there is more innovative or let's say more effective, more efficient approaches out there, these will be allowed. So I think that is also a quite smart approach to the regulation of the PEPP. We designed the PEPP as a default product. So that is what I explained as design that is really fitting to the majority of the European citizens. And here these are the, let's say, the major ideas how to set a default product. Because if you have the ambition to really design a product that is that where you can say, honestly say, I would recommend this for the majority of the people, this is of course a really great obligation as well. And that has done to do with that it needs to be safe. And this is what we discussed. It needs to be transparent, so also understandable for the safer, and in particular the cost efficiency that I mentioned. What we've seen, and this is not just with the market turmoil that we've seen with the COVID-19 pandemic, but also in general, of course, financial crisis do of course increase the risk to investments. And as we have a long-term product, this should be, of course, able to withstand shocks, but it should also be, of course, designed in a way that also, let's say, negative trends in investments, what we've seen with the low interest rate environment, for example, in Europe, how can we help to mitigate the financial risks to the individual saver? Because here the PEPP should give, let's say, a value added to the consumer that they could not necessarily achieve if they would invest themselves. So I think this is very, very important. And so we've been developing a regulation that is using tailored investment strategies, but also we wanted to learn from other sectors and how risk mitigation techniques are done there, and looked into pooling mechanisms that would support to mitigate the financial risks to the individual saver. Overall stance that we also wanted to have a fair and especially also a transparent treatment of the individual savings. So if you're using, let's say, the collective saving, that the reconciliation to the individual accounts are very transparent, that they follow very clear rules, and in particular that they ensure a fair treatment of all the savers. The other points are that we really wanted to develop, and this will be a subject also what you will discuss in the conference later on, what is a true retirement savings product. And here, for us, this means that the whole objective of this product, and that also then the following regulation of that, ensures that we can provide stable and adequate retirement income. We believe that the protection against inflation risk is a key element of a pension product, and here also for the PEPP, and that we do design also the accumulation phase or the savings phase of the PEPP in line with this objective. And that has to do also with, of course, linking it with the retirement, with the options of the payout options in the retirement. And that leads me to one of the three key topics that we regulated for the PEPP. So this is part of the regulatory technical standards, the risk mitigation techniques. And I think this is a key element to, let's say, the design and also making this a default product. I think it's quite an innovative approach, as I just mentioned, because we're using a principle-based, what is the objective? We allow for, of course, very different and also future newer risk mitigation techniques, as long as they, of course, match the criteria that we set out. When we designed what are the criteria, what makes a risk mitigation technique actually eligible for the PEPP, we really also wanted to see, can we discriminate, let's say, inferior risk mitigation techniques, which means relatively risky still, but not sufficiently, the opportunity for the rewards are not sufficient. So really wanted to ensure that we understand what means a superior and an inferior strategy, and how can we also spell that out in the regulation to ensure that this is being reflected. And it's not just about the riskiness, but it's also, as I just mentioned, it's also to aim at an adequate return on savings. And here the objective is, again, to outperform inflation, so that on an inflation-adjusted basis, the consumer is not would not lose, let's say, that money. So that is very important to look into both the risks and the rewards features. With that approach to, let's say, risk mitigation techniques, it also allowed us to have a very consistent approach to not just how to mitigate the investment risks to the individual saver, but also to take that into account in, let's say, the measurement of the risk and rewards. This has to do with the communication to the consumer. And here, very importantly, is the understanding that we have the two information documents, to which I will come later, which is the pre-contractual one, the PEPP kit, and then the annual benefit statement, where we want to, of course, provide the consumer with relevant information, which is about what is this product doing for you? So what can you also expect it will, which kind of pension you will receive from that? And this has to do with, let's say, the pension benefit projections, where we want to give a very consistent view on this is what you can expect. You can compare it to other products. You can compare it to other PEPs and other PEP investment options, but also to give pre-contractually information about, let's say, generic PEP savers, and you will have to see where you stand in that. Are you, let's say, 20 years away from retirement? Are you 30 years away from retirement? Or in which kind of situation? So what can this PEP provide to you? And this is especially for the pre-contractual information, standardization, also addressing, let's say, the needs. What is my level of risk aversion? What are my retirement needs? Are very important to standardize that information so that the consumer can really compare also between different PEPs. So this holistic approach that we took to measure, let's say, the risk, to regulate the risk mitigation techniques, and of course also what kind of information shall be provided in the performance scenarios in the PEPP kit, in the pension benefit projections, in the benefit statement, but also how to design the summary risk indicator allowed us to have a very consistent view on this. And I think this is also quite, let's say, innovative, but also very much tailored approach to a pension product. So I'm actually very, very happy with this one. The next item is, of course, very important, and this is highlighted in the PEP regulations. So we have the basic PEP, that is the default investment option, which within the default PEP, let's say. And the basic PEP is further regulated. And one of the key elements that the PEP regulation sets out is a cost cap. And here, and this is also part of the draft regulatory technical standards that we drafted, is how we can enforce that cost cap. So EIOPA was mandated to say, well, which costs should be included in this? And quite clearly, I mean, as the regulation sets out, it should be 1% of the accumulated capital at the end of the year. We also want to make this, let's say, a simple approach for the consumer to understand. And I think the consumer would not understand to say, well, it's a 1% cost cap, but X, Y, and Z costs will still have to be charged, and to make that quite complex. So we did follow, let's say, the objective to say, well, in general, this should be an all-inclusive approach. So all the costs that will be charged to the consumer shall be included in that cost cap. However, of course, as usual, there is always a bit of a complication, because not every basic PEP is the same. So there are actually two main types of basic PEPs that are being set out in the PEP regulation. And that is one with, let's say, a high ambition to recoup the capital invested. So that is the investment strategy enforces that whatever the consumer has been paid in after the cost is expected to be paid out with quite a high probability. However, there is then also the basic PEP that will offer a guarantee on that capital that would say, well, whatever was paid in after the cost, I will give a guarantee that this will be at least being paid back. So what we said is, well, this is a different feature, the guarantee against, of course, the high probability. So here we decided that this, of course, needs to be treated differently, because otherwise it would be unfair. So the difference between the high probability of what we define to, let's say, the close to 100% of the guarantee, that cost should be excluded from the cost cap. But of course, very transparently being disclosed to consumers so the consumer does understand what they're paying for. Further, and this is an additional issue that we have faced with the cost cap, because of course, as you can imagine, we were thinking, well, is that cost cap appropriate? Is that something that is feasible? Will providers still be able to provide a PEP if the cost cap is that too low? And so we, of course, did some research, and we believe that this cost cap of the 1% of the accumulated capital at the end of the year is actually feasible. So we see evidence for that at the market. However, what we also see is that to provide advice for a personal pension product, and here is mandatory advice also for the basic PEP, is quite a costly endeavor, because of course you need to find all the information from the consumer. What is their situation? What are the sources of future retirement income and so forth? And it would be quite challenging to within the cost cap to cover all these costs for the advice in the first year of the cost cap. So we would also foresee, and that of course depends on the cost structures of the provider, if that is possible, that it might be possible to amortize those costs for the initial advice within the initial term of the PEP contract. And I already mentioned this is a key element, of course, for us are the Pep Information Documents, which are the kit and the benefit statement. I already mentioned, of course, the key objective of those documents pre-contractually and during the life of the PEP. But I also want to mention another very important part for us is here that both documents can be also provided in digital means, and we did provide the regulation how the layering, if digital means are being used, how the layering should be done. So what is, let's say, the information that would need to be seen on the first screen, and which one on the screen that when you click through. I think this is one part of that. We wanted to have the PEP, of course, a future-proof product, and the digital means are one key element to that. But of course, in general, it is the focus on relevant and in particular decision useful information that we wanted to show here. Here also what I want to say is that we did some consumer testing here, also looking into, let's say, behavioral aspects. And the consumer testing showed that the really tailored approach that we took, what is the relevant information when we think about pensions? How can we focus also on those, not to have an information overload? What are the, let's say, key graphs or key presentation forms that we can use that consumer will understand? And here we also had very, very good feedback about understandability, and that people would also, based on what they understood from the PEP, would make or take logical decisions. And this also has to do, and I think that is also really useful for such a default product, is that we have a very simple presentation of the costs. So what will this product be costing? We have also a quite intuitive understanding of what are the pension-specific risk and rewards. This is the summary risk indicator that I mentioned before. And of course, also to show the projections of future retirement income in a relevant way. And here, again, relevant way would be an inflation adjusted in the first instance. Then I also want to, because we are now through the three main topics of the PEP, which are how to mitigate the financial risk to the individual saver. So these are the risk mitigation techniques. We've been looking into the cost cap of the basic PEP. We've been looking into the key information documents. And I also want to give you, of course, an update on the other parts of the proposals that we did. And here, importantly, we have two pieces of advice on delegated acts that will be done by the European Commission. One is about supervisory reporting, and the other one is about EIOPA's product intervention powers. Supervisory reporting is surely important, and here we're talking about a product regulation, so that the national supervisory authorities would understand how this PEP is developing. And here we believe that this requires some narrative supervisory reporting, and that will then be supplemented or, let's say, reconciled with an annual quantitative reporting. And for that, we developed, of course, the the content, which is also set out, of course, by the PEPP regulation, but also things like timelines, which kind of layouts to be used and so forth. On EIOPA's product intervention powers, I think this is also a very important one, because here we're talking about a pan-European personal pension product. So it is designed for a cross-border provision. It's designed for that you would start maybe your retirement savings, let's say in Sweden, you would move then to Denmark. At the end, you would also work in France and maybe retire in Portugal. So definitely it is designed to exactly do that and to help a modern European citizen. And definitely it means that all the national supervisory authorities involved will have to cooperate very clearly. And also, because we want to build a quality label for the PEPP, it is important that, of course, the national authorities have a common, let's say, vision on what this PEPP is supposed to do, that we all understand very well, of course, what the PEPP regulation is meant to do. And so the cooperation is key. But also what is important for a European product is, of course, that EIOPA has a good understanding and has an overview of what is happening in the individual PEPPs. And the PEPP regulation sets out quite strong product intervention powers for EIOPA. And what we did here is to also give, let's say, some feedback on what are the criteria that EIOPA should apply when looking into using the product intervention powers. And that is, of course, tailored to the understanding of we all developed about the PEPP and what, let's say, also maybe the challenges and the difficulties and the issues of the PEPP could be. We also, and this is following from the advice on the delegated acts, is implementing technical standards. Again, these give further details on the supervisory reporting, but also they give further details, or let's say they implement and put a stance and formalize the notification procedures that I just mentioned that are necessary between home and host supervisory authorities. It also sets out, let's say, the notification that, because EIOPA, of course, and this is a key element for the transparency to the consumer, is again that EIOPA will set up a central register with all the PEPPs that are available in Europe, so that the consumer can also check, well, what is available in which member state, and who would be the provider, what are maybe the main features of this PEPP. And only with the registration in a EIOPA central register, a PEPP can actually be offered in a member state. And here we have implementing technical standards that would set up, let's say, the structures and so forth. Good. And this is my last slide. I, of course, also wanted to give you an insight into what are the next steps. So we sent the whole package to the European Commission on the 14th of August. And of course, these are draft regulatory and implementing technical standards, but also EIOPA gave advice to the European Commission how to maybe design delegated acts. So the European Commission has been, of course, immediately taking this up and have been looking into how to bring this into the further due processes. This, of course, also has to do with interinstitutional work within the Commission, but with the co-legislators, of course, with the European Council and the European Parliament. So in the next couple of weeks, you will see that there will be, hopefully, if all goes well, a publication of those delegated acts in the official journal. And only 12 months after the publication in the official journal, the PEPP regulation becomes applicable. That means only then, after those 12 months, PEPP providers can ask for authorization of a PEPP by the national competent authority. That is, of course, also a good idea, because those 12 months can be used by the provider to fully, of course, implement also this supplementary regulation, the delegated acts, to fulfill the proposals that EIOPA did, and also to implement that, and of course to start the conversation, the dialogue with the national competent authorities on this one. From the EIOPA side, and this is what we're doing with, of course, all our members, is to work further on how do we see the product supervision of this PEP and set out a supervisory framework. So we have, let's say, common approaches, consistent approaches to ensure supervisory convergence, and in particular, of course, very strong cooperation between the competent authorities. And with that, I want to very much thank you for for your attention, but also for your interest in this PEP. I've been leading this project for a number of years, and I found it very, very rewarding. And I really hope that this is a product that will be of value to the European citizen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Hack. Mrs. Sandra Hack is Principal Expert on Financial Stability in EIOPA, the European Insurance and Occupational Pension Authority. Thank you very much again for the very interesting and insightful presentation. Now we start with the panel discussion, and I would like to present the panelists. Mrs. Evgenia Angelova is Deputy Chairperson of the Committee on Budget and Finance in the 44th National Assembly of the Republic of Bulgaria. Mr. Mati Lepala is Secretary General of Pensions Europe. Mr. Nicolas Jeanmar, Head of Pension and General Insurance, Insurance Europe. Professor Bernard Delbecq, Senior Director, Economics and Research, European Funds and Asset Management Association, as well as experts from the Financial Supervision Commission of Bulgaria going to take part in the panel. I would also like to inform all the participants as well as all the people who attend this forum that they are welcome to ask their questions within the chat that we have in Google Meet, so that we have all your questions and present them to the panelists. Now I would like to open the discussion with a question to Mr. Lepala. What are the expectations of Pension Europe from the PEP initiative, Mr. Lepala? Thank you very much.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Very good. Good morning, because I had some technical issues. So thanks very much for having me in this great conference. I think we have supported this initiative for a long time for the reason that people need to save more for their retirement. That's been clear at European level because of especially for the demographic change and the fact that the public finances of most member states are challenged with the aging population. And European Union has successfully, together with the member states, reformed the pension systems, the social security pensions in different ways in different countries. But as a consequence, these social security pensions are much more sustainable financially, and especially for the public finances. But as a consequence, of course, there is much more need for supplementary pensions in order to have adequate retirement income. And there the key has been to increase supplementary pensions, both in occupational pensions, but also in personal pensions. And of course, PEP as part of the personal pensions can play an important role, especially in those countries that don't have a good occupational pension system or otherwise do not have adequate pension savings in place or in practice. So if PEP can offer better opportunities and better products for more people, that is, of course, very good. And then, of course, for the reasons that already have been mentioned this morning, the mobile workers need good products and a good way to save for themselves during their working life when they move from country to country. And of course, we have increasingly non-standard forms of work. We have different types of work that falls in between the existing pension systems, and hopefully products such as PEP can offer better savings opportunities for these people. So we are hopeful for this development. We see the importance. We need to find ways for different people in different countries to save in different ways for their retirement that's necessary for them, and hopefully it's also made possible. And that, of course, very much depends on the member states, what they think about the PEP, how they want to see the PEP going forward. Do they want to make it into a success? And there, of course, the tax treatment, which is the competence of the member states, is really crucial. If the member states don't have good tax treatment for this product, then it is difficult to see how people can actually benefit from it. That would be my answer for the expectations. So we hope it becomes a success, but it's not self-evident, as there are, of course, within the PEP also issues, which I'm sure many will cover today. And one of the key issues is the cost of advice, this 1% fee cap on the basic PEP that should be only inclusive on the advice. And of course, we have many people have concerns. The service providers have concerns that this is too strict, that this is not economically viable for the service providers to cover all the necessary costs for good pension advice. So it has to be a good quality advice, that it makes any sense and is beneficial. So if the cost of advice is not feasible for the service providers, then of course we will have problems with the success of the whole project, and that is of course a serious concern, because we have taken a lot of time and energy, and there are a lot of expectations for this new product and new opportunity, and of course everybody should make all that they can to make this into a success.
Okay, thank you very much for the insights. I would like to invite now Mr. Nicolas Jeanmar to share the expectations of Insurance Europe from the PEP initiative. It will be very interesting for us to see how you view this new product. Mr. Jeanmar, are you online?
Professor Zlasko, he is not online.
Okay. Then I would like to ask Mr. Delbecq, why is PEP initiative so important from the point of view of IPAMA?
Yes, good morning, everyone. I wonder if Mr. Jeanmar is not there, because in Brussels today it's 9:30. And it's 9:22, and it's 10:22 in Bulgaria. So this may be, the reason why Nicola is not there. Just again, thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this conference. Congratulations also for the organizer. And let me also just have two acknowledgements. I mean, first, I would like to congratulate Bulgaria because during the authorities, because during the presidency, Bulgaria played a key role, and in particular, your colleague Tina and the Sheva play a key role to get an agreement between member states, and we all know that pension is quite a sensitive file where the responsibility falls essentially in the hands of the authorities. So it was quite an achievement that Istina, leading the working group of the council, managed to get an agreement around the position of the council. And I think it's also important to recognize that IOPA and Sandra's ACT team did a great job to come in a very short period of time with such a comprehensive and ambitious set of legislative proposal. Now, concerning the PEP, I mean, I can only subscribe to what Sandra said about its objectives and what Matti also said. Let me just put that in 2 words. I mean, the capital market unions and the citizens, the European citizens. I mean, the high-level forum on the CMU and the European Commission new action plan have highlighted that with longer life expectancy, people need to save more long-term to get higher returns and to boost their retirement income. And by creating a transparent, good value product underpinned by high standards of governance and investment expertise, the PEP regulation, in our view, is a major initiative to convince a greater number of European citizens to save for retirement. And of course, the cross-border portability in today's Europe will increase the attractiveness and the reason to save in a cross-border product to young people and mobile workers. So the fund industry fully support, the PEP initiative and its vision. I mean, that's something good for the future of Europe. And let me just conclude this by saying that the industry is also playing a critical part of the solution, critical role in the CMU project. In particular, because it has been agreed by the European Parliament and Member States that the basic PEPs should not only be a PEP offering a capital guarantee. So we don't think that capital guarantees and strategies investing in bonds are totally in line with the objective of the CMU. But the co-legislator agreed that the basic PEP should also offer the possibility to savers to choose a strategy that is based on life cycling. And those strategies are fully consistent with the goals of the CMU, because, as you may know, they offer the possibility to invest into long-term assets during the accumulation phase, which may take 30 or 40 years, and at the same time reducing the impact of the investment risk as the saver approaches retirement. So from that perspective, I mean, the PEP is one of the key tools to succeed, to achieve the goal of the CMU, which is one of the key goals, which is to encourage more savers to invest in capital market instruments. And this is in the interest of the savers because they can expect higher returns. So we believe that this is a win-win proposal.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like now to address a question to the representatives from the Commission on Financial Supervision in Bulgaria. And we would like to see your point of view, and more specifically, where is the place and what is the role of the Financial Supervision Commission in the process of establishing, licensing, and supervision of the PEP? Yes.
Hello, good morning. This is Josif Josifov from the Financial Supervision Commission. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Hello. So we would like to share our opinion, which is that apart from participating in the work of the European authorities, which we do regularly, and apart from the dialogue with the social partners that we value pretty much, and as well as the dialogue with the other stakeholders on the national framework, when the EU delegated acts and the national legislation are in place, the Financial Supervision Commission will, like any national authority, carry out registration of PEPs and ongoing supervision over their provision. So hand in hand, focusing on the social dialogue and the national framework, we would registrate the PEPs and do the ongoing supervision. So that is from me for now. Do you have any other questions? We can't hear you. Hello?
Now, do you hear me? Okay.
Now it is okay.
Okay, thank you very much for your contribution. Certainly, there are a number of questions that we would like to ask the Financial Supervision Commission in Bulgaria, and that will come up within the course of this discussion. So we will do this a bit later. Now I would like to move to Mrs. Angelova from the Bulgarian Parliament and ask her what is the place and what is the role of the Bulgarian Parliament in the process of establishing and regulating the activity of the PEP.
Hello, can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, dear Mr. Vazov, Mr. Atanasov, ladies and gentlemen, participants of this conference, I would like to thank you sincerely for the invitation to take part in the second international conference on the Pan-European Personal Pension Product. Of course, I admire the efforts and the vision that the Laboratory for Applied Science, Scientific Research at the Higher School of Insurance and Finance has to bring together so many leading professional associations, government institutions, market players, financial experts and analyzers, experts in the field of long-term saving products, capital pension funds, people from the business, and of course, academic and scientific scholars from Bulgaria and all over Europe. Unfortunately, we all cannot meet in person today due to the pandemic situation in the world. But thanks to technologies, the new normal, obviously in recent days, is online conference. I appreciate the decision of the organizers to hold the meeting fully online, and I hope you're all safe and take care. I'm sure even through the screens of the computers today, we'll be able to have a very productive and fruitful conference. The chairmanship of the Committee on Budget and Finance in the Bulgarian Parliament, of course, values all efforts made to discuss and popularize any European initiative. Since Bulgaria is a member of the European Union, we have always strived to be in compliance with all European regulations. And I believe as a member state, we can contribute to a more efficient and, of course, effective promotion of such initiatives. So what is the role of the Bulgarian Parliament? As a deputy chair of the Budget and Finance Committee at the Bulgarian Parliament, I would like to assure you that we will do our best to adopt the necessary measures for the implementation of this regulation in the Bulgarian legislation. Of course, it's important to say that most likely the draft legislation will be presented to the Bulgarian Parliament by the Ministry of Finance. I think that the second panel conference, the representative of the Ministry of Finance will focus precisely on the necessary changes in the Bulgarian financial legislation. The Committee on Budget and Finance has the obligation to debate and vote on the proposed legislation in two separate votes. And then the committee presents a written report which is debated and voted on in plenary hall. Of course, during all these stages, the topic will be up for discussion with a wide range of stakeholders. Then, of course, is the time to invite and listen carefully to experts in the field and to take their opinion on the specific proposals. Many of them can send written proposals, and of course, all will have the opportunity to express their pros and cons and to explain their reasoning. Respectively, all members of the National Parliament will also have the opportunity to make statements and ask questions, so the members of Parliament can form a better understanding of the need for the proposed legislation.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Angelova, for the contribution. We've just learned that Mr. Nicolas Jeanmar is already online. Yes?
Yes.
Thank you very much. We're very happy to have you with us today here on our conference. There are a number of questions to you. We would like to start with asking what are the expectations of Insurance Europe from the PEP initiative?
Yes, thanks very much, and really apologize for the delay in joining the conference. I hope you can hear me well, and thanks also from my side for the invitation to this important event on a very important topic. I would say that from an insurance perspective, maybe talking about our expectations, it's important to go one step back to when the discussions on the PEP started, and also what were our expectations versus others. If you take the rationale behind the PEP, the Commission was quite ambitious and had a number of important objectives in mind with the PEP regulation. One of which was obviously contributing to tackling the savings gap. Another one was contributing to tackling the gender gap. But an important objective as well from the Commission perspective was to facilitate the mobility of workers, to contribute to the CMU, and all that was to be achieved through a product which had to be cost efficient, simple, but also safe. And we felt that maybe the objectives were too many to be met. And certainly we felt that the objective of mobility was one that was maybe difficult to achieve, so that led to important discussions on compartments and things like that. So I would say that from our perspective, the objective should be primarily to contribute to tackling the savings gap, especially in countries where it's important. We know that that the situation in different national markets is different, really, and the savings gap is big, especially in some member states. So PEP would ideally contribute to that through products which are true pension products. So meaning there is also an important element of safety there. But as we may want to discuss later on, we feel that a lot of those objectives will depend on whether the level 2 measures will work, and as it stands, we have a couple of concerns as regards some of the level 2 measures, which mean that it is to us at this point in time unclear whether the PEP will meet those objectives, whether it will truly contribute to bridging the savings gap in Europe, whether it will contribute to increasing basically the preparation of European citizens for their pensions. But maybe that's something we can discuss when we specifically mention the level 2 measures or the issues in this respect.
Thank you very much, Mr. Janmar, for your contribution. I see that we are already receiving questions in the chat. We're going to present them a bit later when we finalize the discussion. Now I'd like to ask Mr. Sandra Hack from her position, because she's been working for more than 8 years on the PEP framework. Mrs. Hack, what has changed significantly from the first idea and the current framework? Are you able to start again the process? If you are able to start again the process of creating PEP, what would change?
Well, thank you very much for this very challenging but also interesting question, because of course, as you said, if you've been working on an idea for so long, it's sometimes good to also think back, is there something you would have done differently? Because I think, as I mentioned in my introduction, we really wanted to address a challenge that is more and more emerging, and over the years became also more acute, and to develop a powerful tool for tomorrow's European citizen and not just for today's. I think we did a lot of work to really understand the challenges, and also to understand how you can regulate it, how can you incentivize, let's say, better outcomes for the consumers. And we put a lot of work into this. And I think this is something that was really worthwhile. And I think this is something that has not changed over the years. So what is the objective? And now on the answers, and I think it was already mentioned, of course, there are considerations from the industry. Will this product be viable in the sense of will it be profitable? Because we have a a cost cap, is that these are considerations that I think I would agree. I mean, this is something we need to test. I mean, we did a lot of outreach. We had many dialogues with the industry, but also with consumer representatives, with academics, with for example, the OECD. That was really worthwhile. So I think we definitely did our best. I'm pretty sure it is not perfect. I guess in such a default product, we probably would like to see maybe further standardization to really build, let's say, an even more thorough, let's say, quality label, a product like a bank account that everyone understands what this is about. But I think that also requires further iteration. So I think as this regulation or our proposal is certainly not perfect, but I think there has been a long history and quite a consistent objective of what we try to achieve. And I think we managed pretty well to address the challenges, to match our objectives with the regulation. But there are things that, of course, first of all, we will need to see in practice what is going on. And of course, the areas that were mentioned about the cost cap, the costs of the initial advice. There are also, of course, ways to see what is our objective. I mean, currently, especially in the insurance sector, I mean, the distribution channels, some of them are really quite expensive. And of course, what we need to ensure is that the advice that is given is really tailored to the needs and the demands of the consumer. And they're valuable, that this really makes sense. And how can we also help that this guidance that is provided is really tailored to the pension objective? I think these are some considerations. And then the other part that will be quite challenging, and I think this is important for all our members at EIOPA, to have a very good cooperation for this cross-border product. So yes, indeed, I think I would do a couple of things probably differently. The regulation as it stands, our proposals are, for sure, I would not claim that they are perfect, but I think they're a very good starting point. Thank you.
Very much. And now back to Mr. Matti Lepala. We would like to know, where does Pension Europe see problems in this process that has already started?
Thank you, and good morning, Nicola. Nice to see you. I think the main problem that we are now discussing is this mandatory initial advice on the basic PEP. It has its background. I mean, that was not envisaged in the original proposal, but it was something that clearly the European Parliament legislated, and we of course have to deal with that as it is in the actual level 1 legislation. It is something that is very difficult to change in the implementing or the level 2 or other lower level rules. Even when we see that it is very problematic, because we've discussed with the people who actually are planning to sell this product, and I think it's a clear message that it is not possible to include all that is necessary within the 1% fee cap. And if that is really then the case, then of course it means that the service providers will not, or many of them will not, have the opportunity to provide this product. And then of course it's difficult to achieve the goals of the whole exercise. So I don't know how much can be done, but I think everything should be done that is possible to deal with this issue. There is in the actual PEP legislation, of course, then rules on how this will be revised, but that will take a couple of years until maybe early 2024 before there will be a revision of the regulation and the consideration of how this fee cap has worked on the cost of advice. And of course it's I mean, in the European timelines, maybe it's not that many years, but for people and for the issues that are and the goals that need to be achieved, this is very long. If if in the meantime, during the first years of application, this will not be a success. We have, unfortunately, in the past experiences from European regulation that has then stumbled on the details, that actually with good intentions, but with bad details, they have not been successful. They have not been successful in practice, and that is something that we need to be pragmatic. We need to see what we can do with this, because if the service providers cannot sell this, then people will not be able to buy this, and then this will all be a failure, and that's something we don't want. Then, of course, there are other issues. This is a very huge package of regulation. There are differences of opinion, I'm sure, on many issues, like the calibration of the stochastic modeling proposed by EIOPA on the risk and performance assessments. There are many issues like that. But that's not as serious, I think, as this 1% fee cap. And as I said in the beginning, the very crucial thing is the tax treatment by the member states. To my knowledge, only Italy has this far drawn. They have draft legislation to propose that the PEP will have the same tax treatment as the national third pillar personal pension products, and of course those play a very important role in Italy. Also during this COVID-19 crisis, the uptake on the third pillar pensions has been quite good in Italy. So it is important, I'm sure, that the Italian government plans to have the same tax treatment for PEP as for their national domestic products. But I'm not aware of other countries this far. Of course, they need to decide, but as I said, it's up to the member states to decide. It's their competence to decide, to legislate on taxes, but without a good tax treatment that puts PEP on a competitive level with the national products, of course, again, this would lead or would be very, very difficult to provide this product and for people to buy this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to address a similar question to Mr. Janmar. Where is the problem? Where are the problems, Mr. Janmar, according to Insurance Europe, with the PEP implementation?
Yeah, thanks very much. Well, I would, I guess, very much echo the points made by Matti. First, I would like to say that indeed there has been a lot of efforts put into this by EIOPA and consulting with industry experts, consumer representatives, and it is also clear that the task of EIOPA was always going to be challenging, because some of the issues that we are discussing as part of level 2 are the result of decisions made at level 1. So the margin for maneuver is of course limited by the level 1 text. I guess the key concerns for the insurance sector are around whether providers will be able to distribute and sell the PEP. And I think one of the main issue is the one raised, or the two issues raised by Matti. So the cap on the fee cap, which is not a problem in itself as such, but it's a problem as it is linked with a lot of obligations on providers of advice, for instance. So that is one obligation that is going to be very difficult to meet, especially if you consider what is the potential scale of distribution of the PEP. And currently we see that we don't see that there would be huge volumes that would allow to necessarily amortize that cap. But anyway, most of it cannot be amortized so easily. So that's a big question mark. Taxation is, of course, an issue. And then there are a number of aspects of the level 2 proposals, which we are still studying, obviously, because it's a huge package of documents. But there are some aspects which we feel may make it difficult in practice. So, for instance, what Matti also mentioned, the question of calibration of the stochastic model and how this is being built. But we also have concerns around the methodologies proposed for the PEPP key indicators and for risk mitigation techniques, which we feel go beyond the level 1 requirements and are going to be very complex to comply with. So we also have issues there. We feel that ideally those methodologies should be made a bit more simple so that distributors and providers can meet them. And then as a final area of concern, I would mention the templates for the PEP information documents, which are not necessarily templates that will make it easy for providers to distribute the information in a digital format. So there as well, I guess we would benefit from a revision of the template so that they are, let's say, more future-proof, so more prone for digital distribution, which may ultimately lead to a reduction of the distribution costs. So as you can see, it's quite a number of practical issues we have with the level 2 documents, which ultimately may mean, as Matti said, that there may only be a limited number of providers able, in fact, to sell the PEP as the text currently stands.
Okay, thank you very much. A similar question to Mr. Delbecq about the FAMA's views on the implementation of PEP. Where does it see the problems?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry that I'm going to emphasize again the fee cap. I mean, like Nicola and Matti, but for us, this is the major problem. I mean, and we really believe that, the very vast majority of providers, if not all, will at the end decide not to offer the PEP, unfortunately. Just to give you, we made, also some research and with our members, just to understand this concern, because FAMA, as a European association, as I said, is strongly, and for many years, I mean, we have been working on the PEP and developed proposal for the Commission to come with this initiative. So we are fully behind it. But just discussing with our members, I mean, if you have someone that is saving 5% of a net salary of 25,000 euro per year in the PEP, that would generate with a 1% fee cap 200 euro over 5 years in total, as a fee, 200 euro. And our members believe that the initial cost of advice and the obligation that are set in the level 1 would impose a cost that would be around or above 200 euros. So it would take more than 5 years for the PEP providers and distributor to recoup the initial cost of advice without having any resources to cover the other costs, the cost of manufacturing, the cost of administration, of portability and distribution. So there is a problem. Of course, we could say, is it possible to reduce or streamline the requirements for the provision of advice? IOPA, in its impact assessment, considered that this would be a regulatory circumvention. So it means that, this is not possible according to level 1. The text is rather clear. And there is also an agreement in the IOPA text that the provision of the advice and the preparation of a personalized recommendation could not be automated or semi-automated. So there is just a human factors, a human intervention initially that will be needed to explain to the saver, I mean, what is at hand and to come to a recommendation. So if I, draw from a a famous concept in international economics. I would say that here we are facing an impossible trinity, in the sense that it is impossible to have at the same time three of the following options: the all-inclusive approach to define the fee cap, a personalized advice, and a viable PEP business proposition. You cannot have the three. If we keep the all-inclusive approach and personalized advice, that means that there will be no PEP business model, no PEP offering. So you just have to decide, how to break this deadlock. And our proposal is to exclude the initial cost of advice until the first review of the fee cap. And if I may, on these, just still, 1 or 2 minutes, I think this is possible. I mean, I understand and I agree that with Matti that, and probably with, all of you that, who knows the level 1, this is not that easy. But Article 45 of the regulation, and sorry for being, very specific, but we are at a critical time, for this project. I mean, as Matti said, there have been in Europe many other projects that, were great ideas and that just landed nowhere. So it's right now that we hope still to convince the European Commission that it should do something, and we don't have the luxury to wait for the revision and the review of the PEP regulation, because this will take another few years. And we all agree that the objectives of the PEP, are very important. The Article 45 said that it is possible to exclude some type of costs and fees from the fee cap. I quote, in order to ensure a level playing field between different PEP providers and different types of PEPs. So there is a level playing field issue that may allow the regulation to exclude some type of cost. In our view, the initial cost of advice could be excluded on this ground. Why? And I'm going to be short. In the best case scenario, and you got already the feeling, hearing Matti, Nicola, and myself, in the best case scenario, in my view, only some insurance companies may find it possible to develop a profitable business model for the PEP. Some, maybe not many, in particular, because the cost of the link to the capital guarantee is excluded from the fee cap. And Sandra explained that, the reason behind this proposal. But this is just, one cost that could be excluded. That means that if only a limited number of insurance companies can enter the market, that means that there will be no level playing field between the different type of PEP providers if the all-inclusive approach is confirmed. So if you follow this reasoning, we believe that the initial cost of advice should be excluded, as I said, at least until the first review of the fee cap, in order to have a level playing field and give a chance to the PEP to take off. And my last suggestions, because we at Afama, we're trying. I mean, just to come also with solution to help policymakers. But we also think, if you think differently, we also think that we could accept the text of IOPA, including on the fee cap, but with one caveat. Let's supplement the text by allowing, by an article that would allow prospective PEP savers to have the right to accept to pay the initial cost of advice apart from the fee. We have a distributor, an advisor, they would, meet someone and he could just tell to this prospective saver, look, we have this new European product. It's a great product. I think this is something for you. But, I need just to give you and to make a recommendation. We need to discuss. We need to understand better what is your first pillar pension, your second pillar pension. This will take some time. Do you agree that the cost, and I'm going to tell you how much, that this cost would fall outside the 1% fee cap? For the rest, it's 1%. or less, depending of the provider. But do you agree that this initial conversation and the cost would just be excluded? So we don't think that there we are asking for too much. It's up to the saver to accept. This will enhance the effectiveness of the disclosure of the initial cost of advice, because that would need to be, explained upfront, and therefore this would also eliminate the risk that savers would be charged an abnormal fee without noticing it. So, conclude, can we allow savers to pay if they accept? And can we just accept that the initial cost of advice could be excluded to create a level playing field? Those are our main suggestions. It's now in the coming weeks that a decision needs to be made, and we hope that member states like Bulgaria, which have been so active, in the preparation of this regulation, could also discuss that with a colleague from other member states, with the presidency, and with the European Commission to come to an agreement. I think that the young citizens of Europe waiting for the PEP are waiting for such bold, courageous step by the policy makers. We should not be prisoner of some legal interpretation of the text that can be subject to, I would say, other interpretation. Thank you.
Very much. You indeed brought a lot of light to this question that is to a lot of questions actually that are related to PEP and that each of one is asking himself. And it was really very, very, very interesting for all of us. And now I would like to ask Mrs. Angelova from the Bulgarian Parliament about her perspective. And in particular, the PEP concerns more than one financial activity. The activity of pension institutions, insurers, asset managers, banks, distributors, and others. What is your expert opinion, Mrs. Angelova? Is there any need for changes in sectoral legislation in different laws in our country? And if yes, how do you see these changes? They are going to take place one by one, or it's better to take place as a package? Thank you very much.
Thank you. To answer in short, usually, meaning in principle, such changes can be made as a package. But you know that the pan-European personal pension product is a unique opportunity to empower the European citizens to participate in the capital market union. On the other hand, it's a product that should deliver to consumers a simple, transparent, cost-effective, and reliable option to save for their retirement. And on the other hand, it's a product that will help to mobilize the capital in Europe. Given that the draft regulatory and implementation technical standards, as mandated by the regulation, they should respond to the achievement of this goal. Of course, when debating the issue of PEPs, it's important to remember that the individual pensions market is very fragmented, and you all know that. In general, there is a diversity of regulations at the European Union and national level throughout the member states. And this hinders the development of a competitive market for pension solutions. We should remember that there are still countries where there are almost no pension products. Look, statistics says that over the next 50 years, and you know that, you're experts, but the ratio of retirees to people in working age in the European Union will double. Currently, there are 4 working people for each pensioner. In half a century, there will be only 2 people working for each retiree. Unfortunately, today, less than a third, it's actually 27% of working age Europeans save for private retirement. This is not enough. Yes, we say the situation may be improved by raising the retirement age, but Eurostat research indicates that in Poland, for example, in 2060, the ratio of people over 65 years old to people working could be over 70%. So increasing the retirement age may also not be enough. We understand that the PEPP will also support the European Commission action plan for creating European Union capital markets, which aims to strengthen the European financial system. And again, it's assumed that as a result of European Union citizens investing in a uniform retirement program, the supply of capital for long-term investments will increase. And just one last thing, whatever the legislation is passed piece by piece, one by one, or as a package, I believe that especially the Bulgarian parliament will make its decisions so it's in the best interest of the citizens, but also as well as the economy in the long term.
Sharing us your perspective, it is extremely valuable within this discussion. And now I would like to pose a question to Mr. Delbecq again, and it is related to the key information document that EIOPA has proposed recently. What is your view on that proposal, Mr. Delbecq?
Yeah, thank you for asking the question. You know, I've been critical about the fee cap, but I think this is just the biggest problem. And for the rest, I would say that you know, we are quite happy and I would say also impressed by the work that has been done, in particular in the area of disclosure and the PEP kit. So in a nutshell, you know, we think that the proposed PEP kit is a you know, good step forward in the space of key information documents that should inspire, I mean, you know, other legislation. EIOPA also managed to tailor the information requirements to the long-term nature of the PEP, which is different from an insurance product, which is, I mean, regular insurance product, or from a UCITS. And that required to look at the risk and performance indicators in a different way from that taken for PRIP. And this was challenging, you know, just it's easier to kind of accept the risk of a UCITS, you know, over a period of 3 or 4 years of investment. If we are talking of a PEP to a young guys who would start saving at 30 and would, you know, therefore aim to keep it for maybe 40 years, the concept of risk is quite different. And the fact that EIOPA you know, accepted the idea of using stochastic modeling to you know, assess the performance and the risk, it was a very good decision. So we can only be happy about it. Of course, you know, there may be, as my colleague said, there may be some issue, you know, regarding calibration, and you know, but just in you know, the direction taken is the right one, including also about the possibility and the push by Sandra and Gabriel Bernardino on the possibility of presenting the PEP using digital technologies and allowing for the layering of information. I think we need to you know, this is just the way of communicating, in particular with the use of today. So the signal is there. Now we may just see, you know, whether all the requirements that are set would indeed allow and facilitate the possibility of using digital technologies. But I think that it's a great signal given by EIOPA, the ESAs, therefore the European authorities, that information communication to investors needs to be revisited in light of the, let's say, of the behavior of the youth. I mean, because let's do not forget that the PEP is a voluntary, you know, savings product. So you need to take a decision to set aside some money to save into this product, and this money will be kept, you know, blocked for years and decades. So you need to convince people, and they need therefore to have this information in a way that give them the incentive to read it and understand it. So that's a very good progress made by IOPA. And to conclude, I also totally agree, and our industry totally support the idea that the PEPP kit should display the retirement income in real terms to make savers understand that inflation undermines the value of savings. And this is, you know, in a world of limited financial literacy, there are still many people, and studies prove that, who don't understand that inflation, what is inflation and the cost of inflation. So it's quite important. Inflation is not dead. We may even feel that, you know, following the, given, you know, what is being done to help the European economy to overcome the COVID-19 crisis, that down the road, possibly inflation could increase. So people should understand the cost of inflation, and therefore we fully agree with IOPA that the information given about the accumulated savings in the PEPP should be given in real terms. This is good, and with this type of information, the PEPP offers another opportunity to convince European savers to save more for retirement in capital markets instruments like in the PEPP, rather than keeping their wealth in bank accounts that are offering today, you know, close to zero and soon negative interest rates. So the future belongs to the PEPP, provided that there is this last effort made by the authorities to do something about the fee cap.
Okay, thank you very much. We are anyway going to revisit the question of the key information document later on within the event. And now we would like to see especially Mr. Lepala and Mr. Jean-Mar's view on the market perspective. How do you see the market within 2 to 5 years?
Should I start? So I think the personal pension market is underdeveloped. Of course, with the PEPP proposal, there was the ambition level of how much additional savings would there be. That was very, very ambitious. So there's a lot to do. So many people need to be convinced that this is a good product, and I'm sure other products it's not just about the PEPP, it's about other retail savings as well. So life insurance and mutual funds and other types of retail savings. So it is important that we have policies that support this. Of course, we just recovered more or less from the great financial crisis, and that had a big impact on the pension savings and ability to save for many people. And this ongoing pandemic, of course, has a huge hit on the real economy. We have different measures in different member states and also at European level to alleviate this. Some countries have more resources to supplement the missing salary income of people. Some have less. And of course, all of this has a big impact on how people are able to save for themselves, how they are able to buy retail savings products such as PEPP. And then, of course, how the member states are able to support these because their public finances are challenged and stretched. The very low interest rate environment maybe enables member states to increase their debt and deficit levels, but they are, of course, on a very, very high level already. And this year, the situation gets much more serious. And in the end, of course, member states and the European Union has to deal with this. So my concern is that even when there is increasingly a need for people to save and to buy retail savings products, that is evident, and the crisis makes it even more necessary, because the challenges for public finances will have an impact on the social security pensions in the end. So people need to be able to save for themselves, but whether they can and whether that can be supported by the member states, that's the concern. So even though, you know, there's not automatic connection that for the need and the ability, so we need to really see how we have policies in place and legislation in place that enables people for the best possible outcome for the biggest number of people, so that not big groups of people or countries are left behind. And I believe that in this, of course, it is very much not just about retail investments, it's about and savings, it's about the whole three-pillar pension system, that we have systems in place, well designed, so that they are very effective and provide for good outcomes and good retail savings opportunities for especially those who need them. This should not be a luxury issue. This should be something that especially people who need retail pension savings products are able to get them.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jean-Marc, your view?
Yes, thank you very much. Maybe just quickly to, if the question is related to the PEP, as I already mentioned, there are a number of question marks. I just wanted to say, maybe to open further discussion that you will have during this seminar, that beyond the adoption of the level 2 measures, I believe there are a number of issues which are not covered by level 2, which would need to be also addressed through, for instance, guidance. And I just mentioned a few here, like the criteria that the national competent authorities will use to assess the PEP registrations, the practical consequences of restoring a PEP registration, guarantees that are both contrasted with or listed as an example of risk mitigation techniques, the application of PEP-specific distribution rules in parallel with sector requirements. I mean, there are all sorts of questions that we still have that are not addressed under level 2, which we feel need to be addressed for in order to have a complete framework that would then enable providers to operate safely. So I'm just mentioning that as a task that is important to consider for the months ahead. As far as the evolution of the private pension market is concerned, of course, it's very difficult to say. As Matti said, we live in uncertain times. The COVID-19 pandemic is going to have an impact on the economy, on people's ability to save, but also, as Mrs. Angelova said, I think more than ever is there a need for people to prepare for their retirement, to take responsibility. In many member states, people are not saving enough, and there is a real need to help them do that, as this is going to be vital for the future. I note that in the recent months, as part of the discussions around the Capital Markets Union, there is a high focus on pensions at European level, and as part of the action plans on this, there is a focus on automatic enrollment mechanisms, on tracking systems, on the implementation of dashboard by member states. And these are all tools which can potentially help people save more. And I think they need to be considered at national level primarily. It's not necessarily tools that can be implemented from a European perspective, but there are tools which exist to a more or less developed degree in member states. And I think it's good that all member states consider the introduction of such tools to facilitate the private saving. And I think that's key. I would also completely echo Matti's point on the importance of multi-pillar pension systems, which are mutually reinforcing and a source of diversification of risk. I think this is also an important aspect for to reach the objective of, in the end, the two objectives of adequate pension income and sustainable pension systems. So that's really what should be at the core of decisions on for the future. So on the question of how the private pension markets are going to evolve in the next 2 to 5 years, I would say difficult to say. That there will probably be differences between markets, national markets. I believe that in general, I see a clear interest, even despite the difficult times that we are going through, by many member states to introduce, to facilitate private savings, and that is a step that is going in the right direction. So hopefully there will be an increase in people's savings, basically, and in their own preparation for their retirement. That's what I can say. And the extent to which the PEP is going to contribute to this objective is at this point in time a question mark. As I mentioned, a lot will depend on the finalization of the work on the level 2 measures and the other work that remains to be done on issues not covered by the level 2 delegated acts.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jean-Marc. Now we proceed to the questions from the audience. Mrs. Eva Miltenova asks a question to Mr. Josifov from the Financial Supervision Commission, whether the PEP will be registered as an investment product or a pension product by the Bulgarian Financial Supervision Commission upon approval by the Parliament, and what would be the regime for the PEP in the national legal framework, supervision requirements for the providers, tax aspects, etc. Complicated question. Yes, Mr. Josipov.
Hello again. Can you hear me well? Hello? Hello?
Yes, we do hear you. Please go ahead.
So the PEP regulation provides an unified framework for a variety of financial products by wide range of providers with a retirement objective. It does not distinguish the products as investment and as pension products, and all of these products must meet the same standards, and if they do so, they will be registered as PEPs. So there is one product, it is PEP, and it is registered as PEP. So regarding the development of the national legislation, the Financial Supervision Commission, as a supervisory authority, is not entitled to legislative initiative. So, as already noted, it will assist the competent ministries or the line ministries, you can say, in the dialogue with the stakeholders on the national rules. So we can say that there is one product, it is the PEP product, and it is registered as PEP product without differentiation on the range of providers. So that was from me. Thank you once more.
Thank you very much. The second question is regarding the tax treatment of PEP, as the different compartments per country will have to adhere to national rules and in fact are not too different from regular PEPs. Is there room for national tax authorities to refuse tax treatment on the basis that it has a PEP label?
I can answer that one, if I may. Can you hear me?
Yes, please. Yes.
Yes. So it's a very good question, and of course, it's important to note that in cross-border pension provisions, there's a long history of problems with the taxation. So there's been many tax issues have landed then in the European Court of Justice for decision, and it may well be that the PEP will be also subject to this same procedure, so that ultimately the European Court of Justice may need to decide, because even though there's a Commission recommendation only to extend the benefits of the tax advantages in personal pensions that the member states provide for the national products. It's only a recommendation on PEP, even if the PEP doesn't fulfill all the specificities of the national legislation, as I'm sure you know, as PEP is only partially harmonized in order to fit into the different pension systems of different member states. So there is the question of whether you can then discriminate against the PEP, and I'm sure this will be about, it can be about the freedom to provide services, and definitely also about the whether it's a justifiable obstacle to the free movement of capital if a member state denies that a beneficial or equal tax treatment. So I think it goes to these basic freedoms. What is the limit of the member state? So it's not just the free decision of the member states, but to a certain extent, of course, the member states can deny, but only up to the point where it poses an unjustifiable obstacle, for example, for the free movement of capital. But it may, as I said, it may well be that member states have different interpretations, and then ultimately it's the European Court of Justice that decides.
Thank you very much for the detailed and extensive answer. Dear ladies and gentlemen, we are now moving to 2 scientific reports, and we have the honor to have Professor Michele Siri from the University of Genoa with us. He's going to talk about ESG factors concerning considerations in PEP regulation. Professor Siri, do you hear us?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for the invitation. Let me share a brief presentation on my topics. Okay. Can you see the presentation?
Yes, everything is okay. Please go ahead.
Okay, thanks a lot. So my topic for today is to present some preliminary view on the ESG factors consideration in the PEP regulation. As an introduction, we can remind that in line with the EU recent effort to concretely support the transition toward a carbon neutral economy and in general towards a more sustainable economic system by restructuring the entire EU financial regulatory framework, the European Commission and the PEP regulation includes many requirements concerning the integration of ESG factors. So in this presentation, I would like to draw your attention on 2 main requirements of the PEP regulation. The first one is how the investment policy takes ESG factor into consideration. And the second one is which is the impact of the ESG related risk in the prudent person principle. As regard to the ESG definition, there is a first point of attention. Differently from other EU sustainability-related texts, which refer to concepts such as sustainable risk and sustainability factors, PEP regulation adopts a different definition. PEP regulation refers to ESG factors defined as the environmental, social, and governance matters, such as those referred to in the Paris Agreement, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the United Nations Guiding Principle on Business and Human Rights, and the United Nations Supported Principle for Responsible Investment. However, the disclosure regulation, the EU disclosure regulation, more technically defines sustainability risk as an environmental, social, or governance event or condition that, if it occurs, could cause an actual or a potential material negative impact on the value of investment. So a very precise definition of sustainable risk, in spite of the very generic definition in the PEPP regulation. So this is the first point of attention, and this could be also a matter of discussion in the conference of today. Let's move to Esg Disclosure Requirements. PEPP regulation requires PEPP providers to disclose a series of information. You can see in this slide a summary. There is a requirement which refers to the benefit statement. There is also a duty to disclose any changes on the investment policy. And also, if available, there is a duty to report in the PEPP KID the performance of investment in the terms of the ESG factors. And we know that the EIOPA technical advisor recently published recommends the integration of ESG-related information in supervisory reporting. We should also consider the general requirements on ESG disclosure, because in addition to the specific disclosure requirements enacted by PEPP regulation, the sustainability disclosure regulation also requires to all the financial market participants, including the PEPP providers, a series of further disclosure requirements. As you can see in these slides, the sustainability disclosure regulation requires financial market participants to publish on their websites and include in the contractual documents information on their policies on integrating sustainability risk in the investment decision-making process. Moreover, the disclosure regulation requires to publish and maintain on the websites information concerning whether, and if not why, they take into account principal adverse impact of investment decision on sustainability factors at entity and product level. Moreover, they have to include in their remuneration policies information on the integration of sustainability risk, and for products marketed as sustainable based on their ESG characteristics or objectives, there are also further information on how such characteristics or objectives are met, and if an index has been designated as a reference benchmark, there are also information on whether and how this index is consistent with those characteristics. So we should take into consideration not only specific disclosure regulation, but also the general disclosure requirements. Some remarks. Notwithstanding the potential strong impact performed by the introduction of these measures, the implementation of such rules will encounter many challenges based on the still incomplete state of the development of a sustainable finance regulatory reform. In particular, the applicability of the regulation before the final level 2 measures are even adopted has already generated confusion and fears among financial institutions. Moreover, the effective disclosure by financial market participants of information of the integration of ESG factors in their investment processes inevitably depends on the availability of reliable data concerning the ESG performance of companies. Such data has been found still lacking by many empirical research, even after the introduction of the non-financial reporting directive. So the potential timing misalignment among several regulatory measures still remains a relevant issue in the implementing of both PEPP regulation as well as the Sustainable Disclosure Regulation. Let's move to the second topic of this brief presentation, the impact of the prudent person principle. According to the prudent person principle, PEPP providers should act prudently in the best long-term interest of PEPP savers. In addition to such general rules, PEPP regulation requires the integration of ESG consideration by requiring that PEPP providers should take into account risk related to and the potential long-term impact of investment decision on ESG factors. You can also take into consideration the rationale of the PEPP regulation, but requires that prudent person principle should also take into explicit consideration the role played by ESG factors in the investment process. Such requirement recalls the Commission proposal to consider the sustainability concern in the prudent person principle under Solvency II regime. If we look at the technical advice on the integration of sustainability risk and factors in the delegated acts under Solvency II and IDD issued in April 2019, the technical advice, we can see that EIOPA recommends that on one hand, undertakings should take into account sustainability risk, especially climate-related risk, so to act in the best interest of the policyholders and beneficiaries in line with the prudent person principle. And on the other, that undertakings should assess the potential long-term impact of their investments on sustainability factors, performing, for instance, active engagement strategies. EIOPA also specifies that does not mean, this is the key point, requiring undertakings to make sustainable investment or to invest with impact or to accept lower risk adjusted returns, as they may decide on the stewardship approach by exercising voting rights for equity holdings, but also by implementing or adapting investment strategies for the best-in-class investments or exclusion. Such recommendations have been included in the Commission delegated regulation amending the Solvency regulation as regards the integration of sustainability risk in the governance of insurance and insurance undertakings, which introduced Article 275A on the integration of sustainability risk in the prudent person principle. There is a strict link between the Solvency II reforms and the PEPP regulation, as you can see. Which are the two takeaways for this presentation? First one, while the integration of sustainability consideration in Solvency II represented one of the main issues on which EIOPA focused in its attention in its technical advice, on the contrary, the integration of ESG risk and factors in the context of PEPP has not still probably received much attention. As a consequence, financial market participants asked for further clarification by the European institutions, and more important, future guidance is expected. Therefore, the integration of ESG consideration in the context of PEPP regulation highlights challenges and uncertainties to be faced by PEPP in the implementation phase. Second point, notwithstanding such integration currently aligns with other recent financial regulatory reform enacted or planned to be enacted by EU legislators, the still incomplete state of development of the sustainable financial regulatory reform, with the particular reference to the finalization of an official green taxonomy, as well as the lack of reliable ESG data reported by companies and the need for further clarification in relation to integration of ESG consideration in the context of prudent person principle, has generated uncertainties, which means new specific operational legal and reputational needs by financial market participants. So, in my opinion, further guidance by a institution is needed and should be reasonably expected. Many thanks for your attention, and thanks again for the invitation.
Thank you very much, Professor Siri. It was very insightful for us to hear your presentation for such an important issue about the ESG criteria. This issue is gaining importance for all the financial industry, not only for the pension providers, but for banks and for asset managers as well. So it was very interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, now we are moving on to the second presentation from Professor Hans van Mierten and Ralph Richards. Professor Hans van Mierten is from the University of Utrecht, and Mr. Richards is from MNR Partners in Switzerland. And I would also like to draw your attention to the fact that after this presentation, we will have the opportunity to discuss further issues that are of interest. So we will have a Q&A session after this presentation. Also, you will be able to find the presentations of the participants on the site of VUZF Lab, where you will also find the recordings from today's event. Now, I would like to give the floor to Professor Van Mierten and to Mr. Richards for their presentation. Please go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon. You are now watching a video presentation of Ralph Richards and Hans van Mierten. We are dealing with building a PEP consortia, who does what. That's basically our presentation for today. We do it on basically, we divide it in two parts. First of all, we look at the PEP itself, the current situation, the characteristics of the PEP market, and the application for registration of the PEP, and some words about the decumulation phase. And part two is Ralph doing from the IME Pension Fund, and also my business associate on several occasions. He will deal with the PEP-enabled international multi-employer pension fund and the specific situation of the employer fund. And we will get back to that, of course, later. First, the characteristics of the PEP. The PEP is a European, pan-European personal pension product, as you all know. It means a long-term saving pension product, which is provided by a financial undertaking. So it could be a bank, it could be a pension fund, it could be an insurer, concluded under a PEP contract and subscribed to by a PEP saver or by an independent PEP savers association on behalf of its members. So that means also that not only is a retail PEP possible, so an individual PEP basically, but also possible is a collective PEP. And that is sometimes in the discussion we think lightened, so to say, because you know, it's very much possible to have a sort of a semi-second pillar occupational PEP by organizing it on a collective in a collective way. The characteristics of the PEP are, some of them you know, of course, already, but I summarize them again, are as follows. Of course, you have an individual pension savings product. It's an individual account, individual retirement account, so basically compared to a bank account, if you will. But it has an explicit retirement objective. So it's blocked in principle. There are, of course, early withdrawals possible, but in principle, it's blocked until retirement age. And retirement age is, of course, in every member state different. The saving options are also in the regulation itself. You have, of course, the savings options for the basic PEP, but also for the non-basic PEP. So you have in total 6 basically, because you have you have different variants in the PEP. There's not one PEP, so to say, but there are all kinds of combinations, of course, possible. What is very much interesting and what I like very much about PEP is the portability service introduced. In the portability of normal traditional third pillar pension products is quite difficult, quite burdensome, and the PEP tries to enhance that by offering a portability service which should make it in theory much easier to have your pension portable from one member state to another member state, but also intra-member state. So I think it's a great achievement. Of course, we have to wait how it works in practice, but in principle, it's much easier, not only if you switch jobs in one member state, but also for, of course, international mobile workers, not only within the EU, but also outside EU, and Wolf will also tell you about it later. Now, I mentioned that already shortly, private executors, so basically all the regulated entities on a European level, like the MiFID and the IFMD and all kinds of Solvency II insurers, all kinds of basically regulated entities who already have an EU passport can in principle offer a PEP. So the idea is then that you sort of have a communicating vessel with the so to say the organization of the PEP. It depends on the PEP provider, how the governance structure of the PEP provider is arranged for by the different regulations. And then, of course, how the PEP itself is regulated. So it depends on the underlying entity, basically, who offers a PEP. Is that strongly regulated, like in the case of, for example, Solvency II of IORP, or is it less regulated? The governance then, of course, for example, then you have a usage firm offering a PEP. So it depends really on the provider itself, the governance issue. I'll go to slide 5, the portability service. Again, what does the regulation say about this? Well, PEP savers shall have the right to use a portability service, which gives them the right to continue contributing into their existing PEP account when changing the residence to another member state. So 3 years, we will evaluate this, and you can create, of course, sub-accounts. But the idea is then, of course, that you create via a sub-account a sort of a PEP membership, where you can independently of your employer, or independently if you work at all, I would say, because a PEP is also there for self-employed, but independent of your labor relationship, you can then contribute to this sub-account, which makes it, I think, very interesting. Here is again the contributions. The PEP is funded by contributions paid to an individual account by product holders themselves or by third parties on their behalf. There's some confusion, can employers then contribute to a PEP? The answer is yes, of course, because it says here in the articles in the regulation, not explicitly that an employer can contribute, but implicitly it states that third party can also contribute to an individual PEP account. So employers can pay contributions to an individual PEP. So here summarized again the providers: insurance, occupational pension funds, investment firms, asset managers, banks, but also then it is for the self-employed, but also for the employed. So the PEP market shortly, it consists of the PEP provider, the PEP distributor, and the PEP consumer. Of course, the PEP provider and the PEP distributor are separate parties, or can be separate, must be even in some circumstances separate parties. Ralph will also deal with that later. And you also have the administrative organization or the technological platform. There are several providers in the market already active offering or try to offer that solution to a PEP provider or to a PEP distributor. So you see, for example, Tontine is an example of it. You see all kinds of IT technology platforms basically emerging, which offer their services to a PEP provider or PEP distributor, and by saying, okay, we create an open IT architecture, basically, which every PEP provider and every PEP distributor can basically perform services on. Now, the PEP market, very shortly, there you see the countries which might be very interesting for the PEP. I will deal with this not further. The application for registration of a PEP. Of course, the PEP is a product. It's not an institution, it's a product. So in principle, it's arranged for that you can get a PEP stamp, so to say, or PEP license with the local supervisor. So in the Netherlands, DNB, in Belgium, FSMA, in Luxembourg, the CSFS. So it depends on basically, again, the provider behind it. But in principle, the PEP license itself you obtain with the national supervisor, whereas IOPA has the powers for the ongoing supervision of the PEP. So they basically, if it no longer fulfills the requirement, IOPA can intervene and put PEP off the market, so to say, in very, I hope, exceptional situations. What is very interesting is the application of a PEP. We see now, I see now questions already emerging from, can we not change an existing third pillar product or even an existing second pillar product? Because in some member states you have an individual DC in the second pillar. Can we not change a third pillar product or second pillar product, convert this into a PEP? Of course, for a third pillar product, that's possible. But I looked into the regulation itself, and I think that also it is possible for an existing second pillar scheme. And that makes it, again, very interesting, because if you then can convert an existing IDC scheme into what we have in the second pillar into a PEP, then you can, of course, immediately have bigger scale advantages. The decumulation phase, so it's not arranged for as such in the regulation itself. It's only the accrual phase, the build-up phase for the pension contributions. But it is in that sense arranged that basically it's left to the member states itself to offer to how to deal with this situation. Because in some member states, of course, you have a lump sum possibility. In some member states, you don't. There is the payout phase, a long life annuity, for example. But it is in principle left open to the member states how to arrange for the decumulation phase. It might be possible that in the PEP2 or the PEP3 regulation, more detailed regulations also will follow on that respect. But for now, the PEP only sees on the accumulation phase. Ralph, I now give the floor to you. Part 2, a PEP-enabled international multi-employer fund, and maybe you can add a few words or say a few words about our involvement in this project, because I announced on LinkedIn also that we will do a very nice announcement. So maybe you can add a few words on this as well. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Hans. Yes, my name is Ralph Richards. I'm, or at least we are initiators for the hold on a second. Just bear with me for 1 second.
Shall I put the presentation back on,
please.
Ralph?
Yes, please.
Okay, sorry, because it disappeared somehow. Let me see.
So apologies for that slight technical hiccup. We're back again. So what we as the initiator for the International Multi-Employer Pension Fund, which is infrastructure setup that we are placing in Luxembourg, have Hans, can you move on to the next slide, please, if you don't mind?
Sure.
Yeah, that's right. So what we're doing, I quickly want to also introduce the involvement of Hans into this project or into this enterprise. So Hans, we're delighted to have Hans, as one of our board members in the setup of the International Multi-Employer Pension Fund outset from Luxembourg, using a Luxembourg ASAP regime. And what we're doing there is we are building a complete framework, a cross-border framework for corporates to, especially for the union states, to host pensions. Now, as the entire PEP initiative came up, we thought we could also extend this framework to host a PEP compartment. And that's exactly what we have done, because at the end of the day, the infrastructure, all the setup providers and the nuts and bolts around it are the same. So we thought it might be a good idea to expand on the IOP platform to accommodate PEP. And as you see in the illustration here, that's exactly what we have done. So we are currently in the process of launching a Luxembourg-based subcompartment, or I would say a compartment, which will be followed by several other compartments. Each of these is dedicated to one of each of the European member states, and which corporates can then cross-participate. This is also foreseen that we go over and above the EU border to regions as the GCC and the UAE, where we are thinking or we are planning to set up a PEP-like arrangement for these jurisdictions as well. And as I said, the hardest or the toughest argument is to get the infrastructure, to build the infrastructure, to build all the supplier framework and also the provider network that can support such an infrastructure, which we have already done. So we believe that with this in place, we will be much faster in getting a PEP compartment rolled out, and that's exactly where Hans is assisting us in the role of a board membership to get this done. The investments and all the other components that go with it, which Hans described in his previous information, is what we are literally what we're doing here is we are converting the theory into practice in this, and that's what we hope to achieve also from the PEP world. So in the IOP world, it's something it's not something new. It's already been in place for quite a while. We're just putting this whole framework together, but in the PEP world, it's pretty new, and we're trying to accommodate a compartment to sit exactly on this framework. Would you mind moving to the next slide, Hans? Yep. Yeah. So here I have put in an overview of how such a distribution network would work. As you see, this requires a whole raft of suppliers and also a raft of, I would say, service providers that need to come together in order to make this happen. And as you see in this setup, we have put together all the required components. So starting from the administrator, starting from a depository bank, the auditing, the online administration platform, and actuary services, and of course, the regulator who oversights that. And because this is set up in Luxembourg, it's oversighted by the Luxembourg regulator, or it will be oversighted by the Luxembourg regulator. And this will obviously have need to be then passported to the rest of the union. And on the top left hand, you see how the distribution service is organized or will be organized. We got the framework can be distributed to the end client through the various distributors. So namely insurance companies, banks, broker agents, asset managers, pension funds, which we are one of them. And what the distributors then need to do is to sign up to this service and take on a distribution role. And what's also interesting is that any of those distributors listed in that second box on the left-hand side could also white label this. So they could come and take this service. They can brand it based on what their services should look like, and then they can promote it from there. So what we are offering is more or less an ecosystem which can be then white labeled and branded to any of those insurance and broker firms or anyone who wants to offer a PEP. What's also very important in the PEP world is to try to provide a very simplified and I would say very well thought through investment solutions. So here, one example I have alluded to is you could work with large investment houses such as an AGI, a PIMCO, or any one of these large providers, and plug in the investment solutions to the PEP platform. So in this illustration, what we have done is we are literally creating a life cycle solution. It can be also a non-life cycle. It really doesn't matter. But we believe that a life cycle investment solution fits quite well in the pensions world, and we offer that through this platform to the end PEP recipient, right? Now, as I said, this can be tailored. So if, for example, one of the distributors, Bank A, says, okay, I like the lifecycle solution that is on the ecosystem, but I want to also offer my own investment choice, which obviously you can do because the framework allows them to do that. So that's another big advantage in joining the ecosystem. And what's also important, also really important, is in order to make this really work, you need to have a very robust and I would say pretty much well-organized distribution and mechanism, and this all got to work in a digital format, because any manual intervention in the whole process is going to fail, because it will require a huge amount of resources, meaning support staff, if that's the case, the business case will fail because you won't be able to pay up to all those resources to market this to the price that the PEP has proposed. So the service, as you may know, is being offered. It has to be 1% of the investments, so it should not go beyond that, and therefore it has to be all completely digitalized. And in order to get it all to get to that price, you have to have it all STP enabled. So the ecosystem we are putting forward, you will see, Hans, if you don't mind, if you move to the next slide, please.
Yep.
The system we are proposing is, this is not just a proposal, this is what we are already working on, is as we call it a gated community. And what it means is that any
that's already in place, Ralph?
Yes, so in place
Yeah.
in the sense we have the framework is in place. We are talking to technology providers because there's various components. So, for example, if you look at the individual PEP contributor or a PEP participant, right? He or she will need to authenticate and get authentication and authorization from the main PEP ecosystem. And in order to do that, we need to identify. So what we are currently doing, Hans, is that we're working with global, let's say, authentication and service and authorization, digital authentication and authorization service provider, probably one of the largest in the world, to literally compose the technology component of this. So this is a framework that we have already put in place. We're just working with the various elements in order to compile this together. And on the gray area, you see what it means from a let's say authentication and authorization standpoint, all the various steps that need to happen in order to make that particular individual get onto the ecosystem. So what I'm trying to allude is that the PEP will not fly to the price that has been proposed if we do not have a completely digitalized front to back STP enabled system, and that's exactly what we're trying to achieve here.
Now sorry, Rolf, we of course in IOPA we have a discussion also about this 1% fee cap, and it's very, very well possible, exactly as you say, if you completely digitalize the whole surrounding, basically, and that's what we're doing here.
Exactly, because if you put in, I mean, real human beings to manage all these services, right? You will not be able to, pay all that with that 1% cap, and then the whole business case will fall apart, so it's not going to work. So therefore, we are quite confident that the technology is there. It's a matter of getting the right, let's say, the right mix and getting the right STP level enabled. And we are 1,000,000% sure that we have the right partners. They're all working towards this. And we would like to, pretty soon come up with a prototype on to demonstrate how this service, how this ecosystem will work. And obviously we already have most of these components in place for the International Pension Fund. Obviously that's not for individuals, that's foreseen for corporates, but the mechanism is the same. So all we need to do is to enable the individual component of this. And by doing that, then we'll be fully in line with the digital STP, and we should be able to comply with the 1% cap. That said, I know this is a lot of information to squeeze in for 30-40 minutes, but we should be around and our coordinates are available. So should you have questions, please feel free to reach out to either Hans or myself. We got also other folks within our team who can give a technology presentation on how exactly the ecosystem technology is put together. And I'm more than happy to organize one or the other sessions or extend this discussion on demand. Thank you very much, and look forward to being in touch soon.
Add anything else to your presentation that was recorded, Professor Merton?
Yes, thank you again. If I can add shortly two things. I heard it before the discussion about the tax treatment. I think, to be honest, from a European point of view, it's quite a non-discussion, I would say, because it's very clear that on the basis of EU case law, you have to grant exemption to the PEP. If you give exemption to your national third pillar products, you should also give it to your PEP. And if you discriminate between them, like the Netherlands is planning to do, not only they voted against the PEP, but also now they are planning to not give it a tax exemption. I think that's clearly, again, not in line with EU case law on that matter. That's the first thing. The second thing is that the 1% fee cap, I heard Bernard also talk about this. I know it's a challenge, but in the case of our pension fund, sorry, Wolf, there the 1% fee cap is easily achieved, even lower than that. So it's quite possible if you use very state-of-the-art technology to stay below that 1% fee cap. So I understand it's a challenge and it's difficult for some, but yeah, on the other hand, it's very much possible. So I think 1% is a very fair fee cap, and it's a challenge for us, for the market parties, to stay below that. And I think who will, in the end, who will achieve that, yeah, they should be also the front runners of this proposition. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can I say something?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, I mean, Hans, yeah, I heard Bernard, Hans speaking. I heard you saying that already a few times. We totally disagree. We are not talking. We are talking here just to be sure. We are talking about here the third pillar. Voluntary with all the requirements regarding the provision of savings. We are not talking about a second pillar, occupational pensions product, where indeed the cost would be, is in general, lower. So in these cases, we would even know no example, of existing product in the third pillar with this level of, I would call it MiFID II types of advice that would just, that could be sold with this level of fee cap. So we just have to keep in mind this, the importance of the advice. And of course, in the second pillar, the situation is very different because you have economies of scale, in providing these advice.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the audience?
Yeah, maybe Rolf, you can add a few sentences to what Bernard said, because I agree to disagree, so to say, but maybe we can continue this discussion privately further, because I think it's possible. But Rolf, maybe you can add a few words on this.
Yeah, about the 1%, it's a challenge indeed, but I think as we discussed a few minutes ago, if we get the technology right and then the STP enabled, we should be able to service within this cap, or perhaps even a little lower. Because anything beyond that, I think it's a no-go to the end recipient, because you have to make it attractive, and if not, no one's going to sign up to it. So I think it's a challenge as a provider, to make sure we balance and get the service right to the right price, which has been proposed. So that's what we're working on. I mean, if you can get it much below 1% is better, but at minimum, we should target to make the technology work for that price.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments from the audience? Okay, dear participants, dear guests, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to thank you for the participation in the panel. I think the discussion was very fruitful and interesting to all of us. And we will continue after the lunch break with the second panel, which will start at 1:20 Bulgarian time. So with these final words, we would like to close the panel. Thank you again very much, and see you in the second panel.